she's out there somewhere. So he grabs a buddy of his, a former federal agent, to help him find her.
It's like Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon stumbling across Asia.
They joke, but this was scary stuff. And finding her?
No.
Odds were way against that.
No, you're talking to me.
We were actually there for the search, but no one knew how this was going to end.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ann Curry. She was just one girl among hundreds of thousands, from Bangkok to Buenos Aires to Memphis, preyed upon by human traffickers. She was poor, helpless, and naive, but she did have one thing going for her: two men who cared and would stop at nothing to get her back. Their rescue mission was dramatic and dangerous. Chris Hansen with the story as it happened.
October 5th, 2006. Troop Emonds and his Philippine-born wife, Ravina, are at home in Oregon when they receive a panicked call from overseas.
I'm sitting there, I'm trying to watch a football game, and all of a sudden my wife's cell phone rings. My wife gets really upset.
On the other end of the line, their 22-year-old Filipino niece, Lonnie Ejercito.
She was scared, crying, and in total desperation.
And what did she say?
Get me out of here.
And then someone on the other end takes the phone from Lonnie.
And she said, if you want your niece back, you have to send us $1,200, and we'll give you a bank account to send it to. And she hung up.
They wanted the money wired to this bank account. And did this strike you as a ransom demand?
Mm-hmm.
It sounded like kidnappers, but all he knew for sure, his niece was desperate.
She wanted out of there, and she didn't know what else to do, so she called the only person on the planet that could possibly help her.
Troop and his wife had just finished putting Lonnie through nursing school in the Philippines and thought on balance things were looking up.
How would you best describe her?
Good looking, got everything to live for.
Lonnie graduated but then failed the national nursing exam, which meant her dream of coming to America to work as a nurse was on hold. Her desperation was palpable as the phone call continued. Lonnie provided additional details which led her uncle to fear the worst.
What did you think Lonnie had gotten herself into?
I thought she was going to be ending up being raped and then put into a life of prostitution.
In other words, he worried that his niece had fallen into the shadowy world of human trafficking, where many are lured by false promises thousands of miles from home and find themselves thrown into the sex trade. Troop Emonds wasn't sure where Lonnie was exactly or who she was with, but it was clear she was in trouble. Her family knew she'd been offered a job as a hotel singer in Malaysia, 1,500 miles away from her home in the Philippines. But when she got to Malaysia, her passport was taken and she was told to sign an 8-year contract, meaning she would be in Malaysia against her will until she was 30. Lonnie had been trafficked.
In essence, it's slavery.
Ambassador Mark Lagan says human trafficking is now one of the fastest-growing forms of international organized crime.
Analysts in the U.S. government estimate there are between 500,000 and 1.1 million people who are trafficked across borders from country to country.
That's every year. Lagan, who leads U.S. efforts to combat human trafficking, says it's basically a bait and switch.
They're told, we can get you out of this awful economic situation you're in. With better work, the conditions will be good, the pay will be good, and oftentimes it turns out to be the most gross form of sexual exploitation.
And Filipinos like Lonnie are a frequent target, and there's no shortage of horror stories.
I work here as a prostitute. I lost my virginity here, and then I got sick. I want to go home. Please help me.
Meet Anna. Like Lonnie, she was trafficked to Malaysia from the Philippines. Anna thought she was going to be a waitress, but when she arrived at this club in Malaysia, she was told that servicing customers entailed going home with them. She was forced to sign an official-looking contract which spells out how much she owes her traffickers.
Air ticket, 500 ringgit. Cash advance, 1,600 ringgit.
Experts call this debt bondage. Anna calls it a nightmare. On her first night in Malaysia, her virginity was sold for $80.
I can do nothing because my boss tell me I need I need to do that. If I didn't do that, I cannot pay my debt. I will not go. I cannot go back to Philippines.
Locked inside an apartment above this club, she was forced to service a variety of customers, including Americans. 2 months ago, the Philippine Embassy in Malaysia rescued Anna. She's free, but not well.
Maybe I'm afraid I have AIDS.
As for Lonnie Ejercito, her uncle, Troop Emonds, a decorated former Marine, wasn't going to let that happen to his niece. His wife gave him his marching orders.
She said, "You've got to go get my niece. Get her and don't come back without her. That's my assignment."
Coming up, Troop calls in a big gun, a friend and former federal agent, to embark on a rescue mission halfway across the world.
What made you apprehensive about going on this trip?
You're dealing with bad people, and they all usually have guns.
When To the Rescue continues. Troop Emonds and his wife Ravina didn't know what was happening to their niece, Lonnie Ejercito, but they knew she was in trouble. The pretty 22-year-old had taken what she thought was a legitimate job as a singer in Malaysia. But in fact, she'd been lured in by human traffickers who were demanding a ransom to free her. She was being forced to sign an 8-year contract.
She was scared. She wanted out of there. She's stuck in a situation that she has no control over, and that she doesn't want to spend 8 years of her life there.
As it began to dawn on them that Lonnie could be in the hands of some pretty dangerous people, they tried redialing the number of the cell phone used to make the ransom call. Maybe they could get a fix on where she was. It didn't work.
You know she's in Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a phone number that doesn't appear to be good.
Right.
That's all you got.
That's all I got. But then I called my friend Jerry up.
Jerry is Jerry Howe, who spent 26 years as an FBI special agent working everything from counterterrorism to organized crime to nearly 100 kidnappings. In fact, he worked the notorious Patty Hearst kidnapping case.
He said that his niece had been kidnapped, and he wanted to know if I could trace the phone number in any way.
So Jerry says, "Yep, no problem. When we going?" I go, "Oh no, not you too." So he was going
to Asia, that is. Whoever had Lonnie probably never imagined what was headed their way, as this pair of 60-somethings were about to launch an improbable rescue mission halfway across the globe.
"We got to go get her."
Here you are, retired agent. You've got your buddy Troop, and you guys are just going to go over there and get her?
Basically. Everybody asked me for a plan, from having to write these scenarios for undercover operations for the FBI. It's kind of like a waste of paper. It's what you want to happen, but never does.
So you guys are pretty much going to figure it out as you went along.
That's really the only way you can do it.
Having worked the Hearst case, Jerry was especially worried that Lonnie's captors might brainwash her during the 8 years she would be under contract.
What does that say to you, 8 years?
They'll own her in 8 years. I mean, psychologically, they start immediately. So she is subservient to them. And after 8 years, she'd be a robot.